You're listening to NIL Now, a podcast dedicated to the name, image, and likeness of today's college and high school athletes.
So we're going to explore the crazy and wildly interesting world of name, image, and likeness.
NIL Now, covering the latest sports business headlines and keeping you informed on the nation's top performers. This is NIL Now, where the stars of tomorrow are getting noticed today.
It's the Wild Wild West, but we're wrangling it in. Presented
by Headline Studio and Reddit. Here are your hosts, Lauren Zisler and Kevin Jones.
We're back with another episode of NIL Now, production of Headline Studio and Reddit, where we cover the crazy and wildly interesting world of name, image, and likeness. We'll be speaking to Brent Cunningham, the Vice President of Operations at TCU Collective Think NIL, later in the show, so stick around for that. But first and foremost, KJ, what is up? We cruising along. Episode number 7. How's it going?
Episode number 7, jersey number 7. Then when I switched to 25, 2 plus 5 is 7. Then I went to the Lions, 3 plus 4 is 734. Then at the Bears, 27. So 7 is my number. This is going to be a hot topic episode.
I love it. All the 7s. Lucky number 7, man. I love it. That's awesome.
That's my number. It's my jam. That's my jam. And can you imagine what college football, college sports would be right now without NIL? What would we be talking about?
I know. What would we be talking about? We would not be sitting here on this podcast, yucking it up, having a good time. Kevin, I mean, I don't even know if you and I'd be friends at this point.
The universe has its way in working things out, so I believe we would be friends.
NIL headlines.
All right, Kevin, jumping into a couple of the headlines for today. One of the ones that kind of pops off is Matt Rhule. So Matt Rhule has a plan for NIL now that he's back coaching college football. And so many layers to this story because Rhule, who coached Baylor from 2017 to 19, then went to the Carolina Panthers from 2020 until week 5 of the NFL season. So we saw that kind of come apart. Now he's back in the college coaching world as the head coach of Nebraska. So among many things that have changed since Rhule last coached in college, NIL is one of the most important aspects that I feel has to be tackled. And he talked about NIL specifically in his introductory press conference. Here's a couple things worth noting.
You know, when I talk about all in, that's making sure that we have the money to go do the NIL at the level that the teams we're competing against do it at. So we will look at everything. We just won't sacrifice the ideals and the integrity of the program. You know, the guys that come here, you know, there's nothing wrong with a young man wanting to make some money. You know, there's nothing wrong with a young man wanting to make some money off his ability. Every one of us, we want to be valued and we want to be compensated financially. There's nothing wrong with it. But they have to also want to be here for Nebraska, and they have to want to be here for their teammates, and they have to want to win.
All right, so Kevin, so this is really just a unique coaching situation. He's had experience in both worlds, but now it's like you pop back into the college football world. You're like a time warp, you know, a different continuum here with the transfer portal happening, obviously early signing day, all these different nuances that have taken place. You know, what does Rhule and really any of the college football coaches for that matter, what do they need to do to really prioritize this time, especially with NIL? How do you prioritize? If you're a coach right now, a college football coach moving into this space, what are you prioritizing?
You talking about Ja Rule?
Ja Rule?
No, I'm sorry.
I mean,
I had to. I was trying not to say that, but I had to say it. He need to come out with a new song. That's what he needs to do. I'm sorry, but no. Coach Rhule, he's obviously a hell of a coach, you know, especially in college. So it's good to kind of see him back in the college ranks in that red again. I know he was at Temple at one point. He had Pennsylvania and Temple rocking. So I think he's gonna bring that same attitude to Nebraska. You know, I think it's good to see him be a part of a massive program like this. So he's saying the right things about, you know, the brand and making sure that kids want to come to Nebraska because of Nebraska's brand to play football and to go to college. And then NIL is another piece that's also important. But one of the things that I think that coaches need to start doing and these programs need to realize is that NIL is not a cherry on top. I think it needs to be thought about as a part of these young men and women's future, as a nest egg for something when something goes wrong. You know, there's less than 1% of these football players make it to the NFL. You know, their plan B is sometimes not as lofty as plan A. So that's something that I think that these coaches, specifically Coach Rhule, because I feel like he can get these players and get in their heads and kind of understand them meet them where they are. So I'm not here to obviously be recruiting for Nebraska. I am a Hokie. But I'm saying that he's a hell of a coach, and I think that this NIL thing, when you ask what's the next important thing, is to make sure that these players are coming to school for education, sports, but also NIL is a close third in that, right? It needs to be integrated in there. It's an investment into these players now that they can, I would say take advantage of or leverage their name, image, and likeness to, further their careers. We all think that we're going to go pro and go to the NFL, but there's so many players every season that get hurt, whether that's a concussion, whether that's, injuries with their body and can't play, or is not, sought after players to go to the next level. So now you have a nest egg after you've invested so much time into your skill set in college. You should be able to leave college with something. So I think the NIL thing could be also looked at it from that perspective as well.
Yeah, and I love what you said about Coach Rhule, just in general, the respect. And really that kind of came out as he talked in his introductory press conference, and you've just heard some of his statements. He didn't just take this job and step into this whole world and say, okay, here we are. Like, I'm going to, yes, certainly he's got to learn as he goes. But, he talked specifically about, after he was no longer the coach at Carolina, he took some time off. He's been working on this, trying to figure things out, spending time with his family. And he really talked to the recruits, and he feels like that communication with them is extremely important. Talking about, this is something he also quoted. I've told every recruit I've talked to, I'm not making more money to work today than I would have if I was playing golf back in Charlotte. I could be on the golf course making that same money today. This was not a financial decision. And he says this, that he dove into this, wanted to study some things NIL-wise, study how things are working, the transfer portal, and recognizing how important all of this is for the landscape of college football. So it's no longer just show up and be a head football coach. You're now the CEO of this team. There's a lot that goes into this, a lot of financial decisions, a lot of moving parts. And I think that he's showing how important and significant that is to him. And I think that really helps to maybe win over the trust of the guys that are there, but also the guys that could potentially be coming in.
I think that while it may not be a financial decision for coach to come back into the college ranks, I do think it is a financial decision for a lot of high school players who are going into college, and also players who are on teams. That's why this transfer portal is so relevant right now for everybody. A lot of it's playing time. Guys and girls want to get on the playing courts or the football field and, show their talent so they possibly can go professional one day. So every time you step on that field or that basketball court or tennis, whatever the sport may be, you're basically putting yourself out there as your resume, right? So it's a combination of getting opportunity to play, but then also, like I said, it is partly a financial decision for a lot of these athletes, because now we can finally take part in what we've been doing all this time from the financial end. So I just think, obviously, I am a huge supporter of the NIL space. So that's kind of like my perspective. This is a financial decision. This is something that you could put away for your future. Imagine when you were in college, sis, and you were performing, and we talked about how, Title IX, a few episodes ago, it's like the football players who went to the bowl games and they got all this swag and they got this and that. So imagine you would be able to take part in at least your name, image, and likeness piece, where you could get funded, your team maybe be funded, and you could put some of that away for when you're done with college, and then be able to move into your house or your apartment or buy a vehicle when you or a senior. So I think that this name, image, and likeness piece is bigger than people are realizing. It's a huge thing for the future of these athletes.
And that especially pays dividends to what you said is outside of sports that don't really have that professional layer. The professional sports scene for gymnastics, that ship sailed. If you weren't an Olympian, you didn't go that route. You weren't on the world team. You weren't doing all those things prior to college. You ain't doing it afterwards. Our shelf life has expired. We out. That's it. So like you said, being able to have those types of funds maybe stored away would be super beneficial. And I think where Matt Rhule, has played the cards right here, specifically, is talking about understanding NIL is here. The game is changing around us. We have to change with it, But oh, by the way, we want to change with it in a way that people love and respect Nebraska. They want to be here to play. We are creating a culture that caters to the competitor, the competitive spirit, wanting to wear that on your chest, but then ultimately giving them the opportunities that they deserve to bring in the best players, to elevate the program using NIL, obviously, as sort of a centerpiece for that. So I think it all kind of plays hand in hand. All right, so our next headline, Kevin, is talking specifically about collectives, and I know you've weighed in on this quite a bit, and I think you have a lot of insight here. So the transfer portal, as we're recording this on Monday, 12/5, opened up officially today. And so collectives were really trying to make this sort of final push, this final scramble to secure funds before this transfer portal opened up, because obviously that sort of just adds another layer to this whole NIL thing. So in a previous episode, we talked about a Miami collective gearing up, luring players into the transfer portal. Last week, Penn State collective, Success with Honor, announced a fundraising campaign to raise $2 million in 30 days. And then you had a Washington State NIL collective, Cougar Collective. They sent marketing email ads to fans, asking fans to keep our Cougs in Pullman. Like, can you imagine? Like, it's so crazy to me that suddenly you're getting all these ads and different things like that, basically saying, we need your money, we need your money.
It's genius though, the timing, because if you think about it, there has to be a sense of urgency right now, because everyone sees, even before, like, obviously the portal opened up, a lot of people were saying, I'm going into the portal. So they were letting people know a week, 2 weeks, to almost to a month in advance that I'm at least considering my options, right? So I think that these marketing campaigns and the scramble that you see, is some of it is by design, because it's like, all right, now that we know that people are on alert, they're going to be probably more willing to participate, because it's like now, it's happening now. So when you see a quarterback who's a starter, or your backup quarterback who's next in line talking about the portal, and there's a lot of needs out there, I think that, people, that tactic of saying, look, this is what's going on and it's happening tomorrow, right? Now you got people who really want to support the program, who have pride in that school or that team. They're willing to give, to help out. So I think that that's a marketing campaign.
and I think what's interesting, we go back to something we kind of hit on with Mark Stoops, Kentucky's head football coach, calling NIL free agency. I think now that we're crossing this bridge with the portal being open and we're seeing things sort of unfold as they will, and things will kind of be trickling in throughout the week and obviously the weeks to come. But like, is there any other way to categorize this other than it is free agency in your mind?
No, I think that's like the perfect word. It's not pro sports, but it is one of those things where, similar conversations are happening, but the part that I do like about it, though, I'm not going to lie, is that a player has his or her right to decide what's happening in their lives versus, you're stuck in a 4-5 year contract. You can't do it. Like, the pros is actually a little bit more restrictive. I would say that professional athletes probably wish that they had the opportunity to have this type of thing happen with them in the pros, to be honest, because literally at any point, or basically at any year, you're not under contract. You can say, hey, listen, like, things aren't working out the way that we either discussed, versus whether it's me, whether it's you, the team, whether it's the coaches, or whether it's the system, not getting enough touches, making enough plays. I can go into the portal and kind of weigh my options. And I like that for players to be able to do that. I know, like, for teams and schools, it's not, ideal, because you don't have that full commitment. But, like, I think a healthy system is both sides committing to each other. And now that you have this portal thing, as a coach and as an institution, you have to commit a little more. And I'm not just talking about financial. I'm just saying with the things that you say, the way that you treat people, their experience, their user experience is what matters, right? If you think about the belief pyramid, at the bottom, it's like, what is someone's experience? When they came to school, I heard that I was going to be doing this. Well, did I do that? When I was here, did you treat me a certain way? Did I get the opportunities that we talked about that I was going to get? Was I able to capitalize on those things, right? So all those things lead up to, damn, what has my experience been over these past 3 years or 4 years or 2 years? Has it aligned with what, I thought or what we talked about it being? If it has, then, hey, just take care of me a little bit. I don't need to hop in the portal. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm happy here. So I think that we have to be careful. And it's what we should be doing anyway, treating people with respect, showing them value, like you went in their living rooms and talked to them in front of their parents and their moms and grandparents and brothers and sisters. We love you. We need you. We want you. Okay, well, no, deliver on that and you won't have a problem with me.
Yeah, no, and I think this goes exactly back to a previous episode talking about Bijan Robinson and RG3's comments about, does he come back? Is it something that, could a school, if they could get him $7 to $8 million, it makes sense. So I think that in this case, to your point, when you're looking, is the grass greener on the other side? Maybe this does entice a lot more players to stay because they do have a little bit more control and maybe bargaining power than maybe you would at the next level, at the professional level. So I think that's all really
Absolutely.
good points. And I do want to ask you this last question before we jump into our next segment. Do you think, because look, a few years ago, I don't even know, it all bleeds together because we had National Signing Day and then the inception of early signing day popped in. And I know coaches were kind of up in arms, like, how do we handle this? We got to, all of a sudden things are changing, they're shifting because here we are, early signing day and these coaches and people are preparing for bowl games and college football playoffs and all these things. So all of a sudden it's chaos. Now you add this other wrinkle into it with the transfer portal and how powerful that is. Do you think that NIL and transfer portal both combined can make and perhaps have made that more powerful than National Signing Day itself?
There's mixed views on it. I read something the other day. Somebody I saw on Twitter said something about how the portal is becoming more relevant than like a National Signing Day, like with a high school student, because, you have college players who are out here have college experience. They've been either playing or being a part of a system, a weight room situation, or been a student already in college. So it becomes more attractive sometimes to get somebody out of portal versus bringing somebody out of high school. Now, I'm not saying that's the case across the board, but I'm saying that is a factor now that you have those things, right? So the NIL and portal at the same time combined, it kind of clouds the picture of your recruiting class sometimes. But the coaches just have to do a really good job. I think that's more perception than necessarily, some of it's perception, some of it's reality. The coaches have to do a great job of just still recruiting their kids like they would have done if the portal was there or not, because the portal is not guaranteed. Kids aren't guaranteed either. But now that you have, like you said, early signing days and all these things, you have to recruit people much longer than you had to do in the past because you have all these other phases and these other steps on the way to actually getting them on the campus and being a part of the program. Like college sports and recruiting is really the Wild Wild West, not NIL. I think it's all the Wild Wild West. Yeah, I don't know if I'm really answering your question specifically, but I think that it does throw another wrench inside of the whole thing where coaches have to deal with a lot more. And this portal thing is a lot. You imagine just managing all these different players and you have needs and it's just everybody jumping in at the same time. It's not like you had a year to prepare because you knew what somebody's contract was. If somebody's going to be a free agent in 4 years, then in 4 years you're going to have to worry about that, not tomorrow. What I mean? It's different. It's that's what makes it different from pro. In the pros, other teams have time to commit to watching your whole season, targeting you. Like, okay, Odell Beckham is coming up on his 3rd year or 4th year of his deal. Next year, we're going to be able to talk to him. It's not like that now. From year to year, these rosters are going to be changing. They're going to be different. That means that the coaching staff, the programs, the departments, they have to look at it that way. So the things that we've done in the past definitely has to change. There has to be a new user experience. You have to treat kids with the utmost respect. All these different things that you have to do to manage your roster is going to be totally different than we saw in the past. And it's not just portal. It's a mix of it.
Yep. Well, it's very obvious these coaches, as the CEOs of these teams, are earning their keep. And it seems like more and more each year with these different layers having to figure it all out. So we're figuring it all out together.
NIL headlines.
We are now joined by Bobak Kyeri with the college football Reddit team. And Bobak, great to have you on episode number 7. What is going on? We're cruising along. Your insights have been fun, enjoyable. And I'm so anxious for this one to get your insights as well as Kevin's, because this is kind of a new territory. We've seen these Cheez-It commercials, feeling the cheesiest, when the coach is in the locker room, like saying, who's the cheesiest? Like everyone's all fired up. So basically what's going to happen here is 4 players involved in the Cheez-It Bowl games will be staying in the Feeling the Cheesiest hotel rooms. And this came out as a Cheez-It NIL announcement. I've seen the mock-ups. I've seen what these rooms are supposed to look like. Pretty interesting, cool stuff. I have a lot of questions, but Bobak, just give us your initial thoughts on kind of this new era in NIL and kind of giving these players from a bowl standpoint something additional to kind of work with.
Yeah, this one I think was a real hit just across the board. Fans everywhere from Reddit to Twitter just responded wholeheartedly that this is the kind of wackiness that people like to see with NIL deals. Because as you said, these hotel rooms are over the top. In fact, they're even putting, I guess, a couple of mock-up rooms on the field so that certain fans can also get a chance to quasi spend the night in the room. I don't think you're actually spending the night in the field in the stadium, but during game day, you get to sit in a mock hotel room that looks like what the players had. The response I think was best put by, one of the users on Reddit, RL Rhino7, said there's nothing worse than watching someone live out your dream. And people really leaned into that. Another guy, Mizalis, I'm devastated right now. This is so painful and hard. This is somehow worse than realizing this bowl game is conference locked, so my Wisconsin Badgers will never get a chance to go.
Oh,
This is cool, though. I mean, like, you talk about user experience, being able to go and basically live inside of a Cheez-It box during the bowl game.
Yeah, because one of the other guys, like a 5-star fraud, said, I'm jealous. These guys are literally going to be waking up feeling the cheesiest.
yes.
Some folks were just trying to figure out what else they could do. I mean, will the alarm clock, instead of having like a beep, just have that rant, or that chant, cheese, cheese, cheese? That would be the way to wake up in the morning for that bowl, I guess.
Okay, and then here's the real question for both of y'all. What is your favorite Cheez-It flavor?
I like the toasted.
Oh, you like that extra toasty, that little extra, little bit of burnt look to it.
Exactly. I don't
like
know why
that.
I like
What about
those.
you, Bobak?
I'm not too picky. I always tend to go with the original flavor, only because that's what I grew up knowing.
The OG. Okay. I got to be honest with y'all. I am obsessed. Love, love, love the pepper jack and then the Tabasco hot and spicy. And I'm not a spicy person. I don't love spicy, but I will tell you they just hit the spot. They just give you, and I will say they are probably the messiest too. The crumbs that you get on your fingers are quite something else. But that would be my final question to the Cheez-It folks. Do you get a lifetime supply of Cheez-Its if you stay in this Cheez-It room? Because there's got to be some incentive that carries you beyond just staying in this hotel room.
I like that.
The branding behind this is super dope, super engaging. I feel like they need to have scented, salty flavored pillows that you sleep on or something like that. Just to They already went this far. You might as well have a little more things in there as well.
So now, Kevin, though, if it's like if you're getting ready for your game and you've got like your game day routines, like, is it going to throw you off to be in a room with like Cheez-Its and whatnot? Because some people have like superstitions and they've got to sleep on certain things or bring their own pillow or eat certain things. Like, I mean, this could be a little controversial if you're not careful.
From the player perspective, I don't know. This might throw me off when I'm looking at this photo right now. It's a dope mock-up, and I like how far they pushed it. But I don't know. As a player, I might be thrown off a little bit.
Yeah, if you've seen that picture, one of my favorite comments was from an Oklahoma fan who said it looks like an Iowa State dorm room.
That's pretty good. Yeah, I like that. Yeah. That's good. All right, let's jump into our second headline here. Interesting story here. The potential value of NIL collective Cincy Reigns launched last Monday, okay? And then on Black Friday, the Bearcats hosted Tulane for the right to host the American Athletic Conference Championship game. And then, oh, by the way, 2 days later, Wisconsin announced it hired former Cincinnati coach Luke Fickell, so he gone. So there's a lot that's happened in this 7-day stretch, this whirlwind of things happening for Cincinnati players, athletic department, all these people kind of have to figure out what they're going to do. And I think my big question here and kind of how this plays out. So obviously you are looking for a head coach. The transfer portal is about to open. Early signing day is about to happen. People are opting in and out of bowl games. There's just a plethora of things that are going on right now. You don't have a head coach. I think that's obviously the biggest one. And then you have this collective. So how does this all work in the timing factor? Is this a benefit, or do you think this is a detriment to be able to have this thing launch? And, Kevin, I think you can probably weigh in on this as well. But yeah, I'd be curious to know, Bobak, what are people saying about this?
Well, a couple of interesting things kind of happened since this particular article came out, because Cincinnati has found their new head coach. It's going to be Scott Satterfield, being poached from Louisville. And that kind of surprised some folks. Now, the reason I found it really interesting is then going back to really review all of that had just happened in this NIL space and losing Coach Fickell to Wisconsin. Some of the discussion was whether or not this new NIL collective would be attractive to the right head coach, somebody who gets what's being provided here as, the Bearcats head into the Big 12. And maybe that's what I'd be curious to know how much of that attracted Satterfield to move over, because since he's throwing a good amount of money at this coaching staff, they're going to be throwing, I think, a grand total of $10.6 million. A third of which is going to go to Satterfield. The rest is going to go to his support staff, and I should say his assistants and all of that. Because it seemed like a bit of a lateral move. Obviously, Louisville's ACC, since he's going to be Big 12, so it's not like a huge jump one way or the other. And what enticed him to do that? What we do know, it's going to make the Fenway Bowl really interesting because they're playing each other. It's going to be Cincy and Louisville. They're already rivals. They play for the keg of nails. And here we have one coach literally got stolen from the other, and he's confirmed he's going to be on the sideline. So this is going to be a lot of drama in the Cincy world. And that has been what a lot of folks have locked into, especially as this has developed. And the fact that Cincy is being bold throwing money around, not just, they seem to have a coordinated attack here. They're going after the coaches, but they're also having their collective form so that hopefully they can also bring in the type of players that's a new head, which in this case, a new head coach can put together the team they'd like to see.
I feel like Ohio likes drama. Think about LeBron James' announcement and the stuff with all the quarterbacks with the Browns and the Bengals. It's a drama state. I'm from Pennsylvania, so I'm allowed to say that because it's a rival state in sports as well.
We don't want no drama.
We do want the drama though, right? The fans, everybody listening and watching, they do want the drama. It's the people involved that say they don't want the drama, right. But then they're actually participating in the drama. So, not sure if they want it or not. But as far as this collective, I think it's probably attractive to a new head coach who can come in and put his shape on there. He probably had a lot of things to do with, having conversations about when it was getting set up and things like that, So it's kind of, I think he probably sees it as value, the collective coming to a new place and being able to be the head coach. Because the head coaches for these athletic departments and teams, universities, they have a lot of say in like what's going to be happening with the roster. And not a lot of say, all the say, what's going to happen with the roster in the way they want to target, different things in the portal. So the timing is probably right. Still a little, like you said, a little awkward playing against the team that you're going to be moving to, and then you go over there and now you're trying to recruit and those things. So the timing is weird, but I'm pretty sure that they'll roll with the punches.
With how easy it is now to transfer, will we see Satterfield kind of like making occasional eyes at some of his former players and kind of pointing at like, pointing at the sideline, like, call me.
Well, then you also have to wonder too how many of those kids on the other sidelines are like, hey, like I'm coming with you, coach. You know what I mean? And I think that adds another wrinkle to all of this, because I will tell you, I've heard from various sources, various people, that conversations are had after games, like when the handshake happens at the end of a game, where coaches are approached like, hey, coach, you still got a spot on the team. There's people that will put feelers out there to see if there's opportunities in the transfer portal. And those conversations are happening like kind of right out in the open, like after a game, but to your point, there's so much that's happening here. And then of course, Satterfield gets this job. This collective is obviously coming in. They're basically, to me, it shows that they care. And I wonder if this made the job all the more enticing for Satterfield to make that what you believe, Bobak, to be a more of a lateral move in many ways.
Did Cincinnati not have a collective before this? Or did this just pop up because of the new head coaching situation and things like that?
Well, it popped up before the new head coach, but I don't think they had something they call it the first collective designed to support NIL opportunities for Cincinnati athletes. So this must be the first really official one, at least sanctioned by the school.
So really, if you kind of look at the timing of everything, we talk about that 7-day span. And then now, as we're talking now, it's Monday of this week, Satterfield expected to sign that 6-year deal. It does kind of make you wonder if, these pieces were definitely being put into place because they knew if Fickell left, they're really going to have to do something to entice whoever that new coach is. And if they kind of want to make a quote unquote splash hire, they're going to have the money and have things in place to back it without there being a long lull. Because again, we're jumping into transfer portal time. We're jumping into early signing day. Like this is like primo recruiting period time, right?
Absolutely. Recruiting, for high school recruits, you got signing day coming. Then also this portal is crazy right now. I mean, when I say crazy, I'm talking, when you talk about the Wild Wild West, I think this is the most Wild Wild West part of it, the portal. Not even the deals and the money that people are getting. I think the portal is just like wild. Every 10 minutes, every 5 minutes, you see a new name hopping in the portal, whether a guy is a starter, a backup, or preferred walk-on, and all these different positions are just in the portal kind of testing the waters to see what's out there. And that's literally happening almost at every university. So fun times, interesting times. I don't think that it's, I don't think it's a negative thing. I think it's something that we're all listening, watching, researching, trying to see how this goes and turns out. Well, the NCAA will make some changes or some adjustments as they see fit, I guess. So, I'm still glad to be a part of it.
I think we're in a sweet spot for a remake of The Program, one of my favorite college football movies.
Love it.
The Program.
We get a remake. We get a remake of a movie, and we'll just grab our Cheez-Its and sit down and hunker down. Forget about the popcorn when you can have Cheez-Its, right?
What was that other movie with Wesley Snipes? It was like a football movie and a jail movie. And they said, it's the sport of kings, better than diamond rings. Football. You remember that?
Yes, but I'm trying
when you said The Program, that made me think of that, but that's not the same.
And I always associate Wesley Snipes with White Men Can't Jump. Like, to me, that's the sporting movie of that era that he personified.
That's true.
With the bicycle hat and everything when that was like the thing, remember?
Yes, sir. You got the bicycle hat, biker shorts. You remember? Male biker shorts. Reebok pump sneakers.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Those were the days.
We going old school, y'all.
Yeah.
Bobak, we appreciate you as always. Thanks for joining us here on episode 7. Lots of great content, and we'll keep this train rolling.
Have a good one.
You're listening to NIL Now.
All right, now for our third and final segment, we've got our guest, Brent Cunningham, VP of Operations for TCU's top collective, Think NIL. Cunningham, a former TCU assistant athletic director with over a decade of NCAA compliance experience. Great to have you on the show, and obviously an exciting time. I know things didn't go as well in the championship game as you all had hoped, but it was really cool to see things unfold, watching the video of TCU and the reaction from the football team and the excitement of them getting their name called to be number 3 in the college football playoff. So I know an exciting time for you all and lots to unpack here. So just first and foremost, just sort of your connection with TCU and how all this came together with Think NIL.
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for having me. I appreciate you give me an opportunity to come on and talk with y'all. You mentioned Big 12 championship not going our way, but that's all right. We've got eyes on a bigger prize. I know the guys are disappointed, but it was fun to see their reaction when that ranking came out. So a little bit more about how I got to where we are here at Think NIL.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Hold on. Yeah, I ain't gonna let you just gloss over that quick. We should have gave the quarterback the ball. He done got us that far.
You know what?
What you think?
You know what?
I ain't gonna get you in trouble.
Sonny Dykes, Coach Sonny Dykes is Coach of the Year candidate, Big 12 Coach of the Year. He very well may be the Coach of the Year. across all the country.
Hey, you've been assistant athletic director for too long. That's a great answer. All right, I'm gonna let you get to it. My bad.
No, you're good. So we when I was working on campus, we've tracked NIL, working on campus for years and years, right? In the old profession, it was all about how do we make sure the athletes aren't jeopardizing their eligibility when it comes to impermissibly doing something with NIL. And so, this collective, Think NIL, had formed prior to me getting involved, but it was just kind of stagnant at the time. We knew there was some funding there from some major donors, and we on campus were just wondering, when is this going to start rolling and benefiting our athletes at TCU? Because we felt, we were a little bit behind the eight ball at TCU when it came to NIL. I reached out to the founder of Think NIL, kind of gave him a little sales pitch as to how I think I can benefit, his operations and how we can get things rolling, start benefiting our athletes and building their brands and getting money in their pockets. And so I'd kind of also hit my ceiling, I think, at TCU. I'd been there for 9 years of my career at TCU. And, I had some great opportunities there. And this was an opportunity to continue working with TCU just in a different capacity. So jumped in, we signed a handful of athletes right off the bat within our football, basketball, and baseball programs. We also did some brand building, content videos for a handful of athletes as well, to start showcasing them, behind the scenes, like who they are as individuals, not just as athletes. We were excited to start with that. But it's been a wild ride. It was only March of 2022 when we got this started, and here we are in December. And so it's been a lot of fun. We've benefited a total of 30 plus athletes at TCU as far as athletes that we've paid directly, and that's across all different sports. Not just our revenue football, basketball, and baseball sports, but a number of our non-revenue sports as well. So we've been, we were really intentional about making sure that we helped out student athletes in all different sports.
Let me ask you a business question as it pertains to your NIL group. So how are you guys making, I would say, the company, profitable? Are you looking at it as a business, or is it more, volunteer work? Like some collectives are volunteer work, and then some are trying to make it a sustainable business. So what are you doing from that, you guys doing from that aspect? How do you guys make money? And then how do you sell that to donors and people who want to give?
I think, if anybody's going to be real about NIL, you've got to understand that from the collective side, you've got to treat it like a business, right? You want to be professional. You want to be able to have real life opportunities for your student athletes, and you need to keep the lights on, right? So how we had structured our business was, we had the donor funding opportunities as well, the fundraising side where we kept a certain percentage of funds that go towards our operational expenses. But we also have a side of the business where we go out and locate brand activation opportunities for our student athletes, right? So we're meeting with businesses in the Fort Worth community, finding those groups and those businesses that want to work with TCU student athletes. That might involve, some type of compensation on our part too with the business, but just as you would see those types of deals brokered with any type of business in the around the country. So it's key to be able to keep the lights on, to put out a good product. I think that's something that we've pride ourselves upon is anything that you see with Think NIL attached to it is gonna look professional. It's gonna look like real professionals are doing it, and that's important. There's collectives around the country that some are nonprofits. Some say they're nonprofits. They're not 501c3 type nonprofits, but they might be different categories of nonprofit organizations. We're listed as an LLC, for-profit entity specifically, but that's how we're set up.
Yeah, and just kind of looking at your roster, I love you have such an array of student athletes. Obviously, you mentioned over 30-something athletes. Obviously, talking about the success you guys have had on the football field and sort of this latest news that comes down. Obviously, college football playoff, huge season. How does that change the landscape of your collective? And do you see an uptick, like almost an immediate uptick when you have this kind of success?
You don't want to take away, obviously, from the success of the guys, right? We want to highlight that. We're gonna promote them and highlight their success from this season, but it does increase excitement around the program from all different fronts, right? TCU also announced a new human performance center, kind of coinciding here with the Big 12 championship and the college football playoff. So you want to build excitement from your fan base for big fundraising opportunities like that, and this no doubt generates a lot of excitement. We've seen a lot of businesses that want to work with our athletes because of those things, right? So and that's a big part of what we do for our athletes too, is working with those businesses in the locale to try and get those, I guess what you would call true NIL opportunities, right? Where they're representing a company.
What's been the hardest thing for you guys so far? What's been tough?
At TCU specifically, TCU, I want to say is and don't quote me on the exact numbers, but I believe we had the smallest living alumni of any Power 5 institution in the country. So we're already working with a smaller number of fans and donors, right? So that right off the bat's a challenge. That's been a challenge just generally for TCU, right? But TCU's always been very successful and capitalizing on the right opportunities with the right people and being very successful. So, I mean, it's a challenge, but it's not an excuse by any means, right?
Has there been any hurdles with your funding group? Like, at Virginia Tech, they have called like the Hokie Club. Has there been, how you have donors, you're going after the same donor base, and then there's donor fatigue. It's something that's real. It's like they're being asked to give over in this bucket and then asked to give over here. And then now you have NIL and you have the transfer portal, something we talked about on here. So just wondering, are those hurdles, across the board, across the country? Is that an issue?
I was fortunate coming from, a campus position where those were my colleagues, the people in, our development office, what we call it the Frog Club at TCU. So I was in a good position with them to kind of work collaboratively as I transitioned into this role with Think NIL, and so we were able to talk with donors based off of introductions made through the Frog Club. At the same time, too, I think our development staff on campus understands that NIL is just another piece of the pie, right? It's not this piece off to the side that is going to be taking away money from the student athlete experience at TCU. It's another thing to increase the student athlete experience at TCU. So they've been very supportive from that standpoint. They get it, and that's not the case at a lot of schools around the country. A lot of schools they feel like this NIL can be a deterrent from giving to their athletics departments. And I'd love to see the numbers on that to see if that actually has impacted it in this last year and a half. My gut tells me it's not as big of a deal as a lot of schools have made it out to be, right? So you've got donors who, let's be real, have been giving money to student athletes under the table for a long time, right? So I come from a compliance background, but I'm not naive to that. So we understand that, and those donors are, they're giving those dollars now, over on top of the table instead of underneath the table to collectives. So that money's budgeted already by a lot of donors.
Right, exactly. Alignment is, I think I found in this space that alignment from each level, from the athletic department to the head football coach or basketball coach or whatever coach we want to talk about, to the funding club, then campus funding, and then also the NIL thing. As long as everyone's communicating, and that's why it's also important to have someone that knows someone. It's not a random collective where that has no real association to the school. It's just somebody from the business community who wants to be a part of NIL, right? Then that's where I think you run into issues because people are like, well, I don't even know you, sir. Like, what do you mean? Yep. So, it's no, man, kudos to you, like, for, being forward thinking, and you were, inside the department, and now, still really attached to everything that's going on. You're helping the school be where it is today. Like,
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Brent, I have one more question for you before we let you jump. And this is, again, pulling the curtains back a little bit more as someone that, again, was inside the program, knew the inner workings of it. And now I've been able to use this space in a positive way. I want to know more about this process. So just looking through your roster of athletes, you've got obviously a wide range of men and women on here from different sports, the rifle team, basketball, football, beach volleyball, track and field. You kind of go down the list, golf, different associations. What does this process look like for the student athlete? Do they approach you? Do you approach them? Just take me through a couple of the steps, because I'm just curious to know how this all comes to fruition and how they land on your roster specifically.
Yeah, and the athletes that we have listed on our roster on our website, those are our Think NIL ambassadors, right? So those are the ones that we're paying directly with donor-raised funds. They become ambassadors of our collective. We help, whether it's building their brand or having them promote Think NIL specifically from a social media marketing standpoint, to kind of put our name and recognizability out there for our donors to see. It's a very cyclical process, as you can imagine. I have student athletes reaching out to me all the time about how can I be a part of that, right? So. And I mentioned that the ambassador roster of athletes is only one type of way that we benefit our student athletes through NIL, right? So we're looking for brand activations for them. We're assisting them with event appearances as well. So when they reach out to me, I just remind them, look, as far as our ambassador program, that's based on donor funds. A lot of those donors request specific athletes to see their dollars, right? So we have to kind of abide by those wishes. But when it comes to, those types of brand activations and, people wanting athletes to show up at birthday parties or just to show up at a fundraiser that they're having for their company, we're going to try and recommend as many different athletes as possible for those. But no, they definitely reach out quite a bit. They're all excited. They see their teammates, whether it's from their actual teams or just across the athletics department from a number of different teams. They see them promoting Think NIL and being a part of that, building their brand, and they get excited about that. They want to participate too. So we've always said, our goal is to try and help every athlete that we can, as much as we can. So we're always looking for those additional opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely. And Brent, we know you're working hard. I always say that about our friends. Of course, shout out to our good friend, you probably know, Mark Cohen at TCU. Yep. TCU football. He's my buddy.
Mark knows everyone in the sports media world.
He really does. He really does. It was funny just seeing him light up like a Christmas tree watching the college football playoff rankings come out and the announcements, and you could tell he was just as excited. So I just say all that to say is you guys work very hard, and so it's great to see you using your experience and what you've learned in that process to be able to carry that over to this NIL space with these athletes. So we appreciate you, and of course, if you want to learn more about Think NIL, thinknil.com. You can visit them there. You can also find them on Instagram, see what they're up to, see what some of the athletes are up to. And that is Think NIL TCU on Instagram. So thank you again, Brent. We appreciate your insight. And we'll catch up with you soon.
Thanks, y'all. Appreciate it.
All right. Again, thank you to Brent Cunningham of Think NIL. Appreciate the insights. Great conversation there. Of course, you can follow us at NIL Now Show on Instagram and Twitter or Reddit. NIL. Tell a friend. Let us know what you think about the show. And of course, you can find next week's episode out wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, want to thank Bobak Hyeri once again, Reddit College Football Team. They've been awesome. You can follow them at Reddit College Football on Twitter and online at the Reddit College Football channel. I'm Lauren Sisler. My co-host is Kevin Jones. Big thanks to our audio engineer, Colin Schmeling, our associate producer, Dean, and our executive producers, Richard Diamond, Selena Roberts, and Scott Broder. We'll talk to you again next week on NIL Now.
Thanks for listening to NIL Now, presented by Headline Studio and Reddit.